In this video, I'm going to be creating an SFTP host, saving my production library as an archive with the ultimate end goal of serving my launch library in a first-party context. So my blog URL is perpetua.digital, and it has launch on it, and I want to serve launch instead of from assets.adobedtm.com. I want to serve it from perpetuadigital.com/launch or something like that. So in order to do that, I need to basically set up a different type of production flow where instead of relying on Adobe to update my library for me and whatnot, I'm going to be saving an archive file and then ultimately hosting that file via a CDN. So that's a couple different steps and a couple different tools, and actually most of it won't be done in launch. But let's just get started and jump right in, and I'll talk about what I'm going to do and why. So I have my Perpetua digital property here. I think there's not too much going on in it. It doesn't really do anything. It's just for demonstration purposes. But the first thing to do is go to host. So if you're like me, you probably, in your regular job, don't spend too much time in here. I know I don't, but you actually have two different options here. You can, when you build a library, you can say, hey, I want Adobe to host this for me, or behind the scenes, Akamai is going to host this for me, or I'm going to take care of the hosting myself and just give me the file when the library builds. So that is a host. Most people just use this managed by Adobe option. It's the easiest. You make a change and publish your production library and it updates automatically. But what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is make a different type of host. And that's going to be an SFTP host. SFTP stands for Simple File Transfer Protocol, or Secure File Transfer Protocol. There we go. Confusing it with the email one. And I have two different types here. So obviously the type is SFTP. So that's where the sort of work in launch stops for now. I don't know any of this information yet. So you may or may not have an SFTP host built already, but just for these purposes, let's say that you don't. And I'm going to walk through how to create one in an EC2 instance. Amazon also has an SFTP server product called Transfer Family, but it's like stupid expensive, and I don't need this to be, I don't need this SFTP server to be constantly available or anything like that. So it's much, much, much cheaper to use EC2 and sort of follow the steps that I'm gonna do here. I guess we can cheat a little bit. I do know that the port's going to be 22, and I'll decide that later. But yeah, I won't have any of this information to save yet. But let's get out of here and start making our SFTP server. So over in AWS, I'm going to go to EC2, so Elastic Container. And I'm going to go to the launch instance, and it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. So first things first, let's just name this launch SFTP. Doesn't really matter what the name is. I have a bunch of different architecture types. And then this is sort of going to depend on like how busy you think you're going to be. But T2 micro should be okay. Let me just look at this for 1 second. 1 gig of memory, 1 CPU. Like this isn't going to be doing any like labor intensive things. So I'm just going to stick with this free one for now, and you can always come back in here and change it. That's the nice thing about AWS. So once I make this server, or once I make this container, I'm going to need to SSH into it to set up SFTP basically, because it doesn't do anything out of the box. This is just like a container or a virtual machine. So in order to connect to that, I'm going to hit create new key pair, and this is going to be, we'll just call this my EC2 SFTP. That could be the pair name. Leave this as RMA, PM, that's fine. I'm going to download this, and I don't want to save this in my SSH folder. I want to save this. I'm going to be working out of this folder called Launch Keys. So we'll save that right there. And then I'm going to allow SSH traffic from anywhere. I think somewhere in here, Adobe says you can whitelist these platform IPs. This is something I'm going to come back and do later just to make sure that everything works. And then once everything's working, I can come back here and say, hey, only allow traffic from these IPs. Oh, that's funny. This is called Launch Wizard. HTTPS. I'm going to check that for now just in case I need to like check whether this is up and running or like something like that. Okay, so this is just a warning saying like you can access this from anywhere. And I'm going to hit launch instance here. And this is going to initiate, and then it's probably going to go into a state where it's running. Okay, it's still initializing. So I'm going to let this initialize, and I'll be back. Okay, we're back. The instance ID or the instance that I built is now running. It probably started up in like 2 seconds, but I walked away. Okay, so this container is up and running. I'm going to delete this after this video, so I'm not going to worry about blurring any of this stuff. This container is up and running, but it doesn't have any file transfer stuff set up yet, or like a user who's allowed to do that or anything. So we have to set that up. So in order to do that, the first thing I need to do is connect to this. So I'm going to do that by going here, and let's bring up my terminal over here. And spoiler alert, I have written down this connection. Okay, so what I need to do is, what is the name of this key? My terminal is probably going to try and autocomplete and like help me out a lot. I apologize for that, but so we're going to SSHI EC2.pem EC. Move this over a little bit. Okay, so it's not that my launch instance IP, which I just copied EC2. So AWS creates EC2 user for you, but I'm going to create a different user later when I actually do SFTP. Yes, I trust. Yes. Okay, so I connected. That's good. Now I'm going to update this. This is all written down because hopefully I'll write a blog post about how to do this. I don't think there'll be anything to update here. Okay, yeah, nothing to update. So let's add this user called SFTP user. And I'm going to make them a password for now. But later, this user is actually going to connect using a key pair. But I'm going to make a password for now because I need to connect and just make sure everything's working, and it's just easier this way. Okay, so that's done. We're going to grab this. This is behind the scenes of development. It's just copying and pasting instructions from the internet. So this is just like I'm making folders and making sure that this user has access to them and stuff like that. This is gonna change my SSH config, and down at the bottom, I gotta add this. Later, I'm gonna come back in and change this password authentication to no once I add this user's like keys. Not that. Control, no. Come back. Okay, we're not gonna touch anything. Okay, there's my SSH config. So I'm adding a person here, and now I need to just restart SSH. Okay, but we do now have another piece of the launch puzzle. So that is going to be, my user is going to be here, and the URL is going to be this public IP address here. The path you actually get to make up. I know this is going to be my production URL. Let's just call this production. Okay, so the final thing that we have to do for launch is basically encrypt this user's credentials, but we're a couple steps away from that. I'm going to reboot this, and then what's my next step here? Okay, so I'm going to reboot that and give that a second to reboot, and then I'm going to test whether the SFTP user that I just created can actually connect to this, because via SFTP protocol, right? So that is what launch is going to be doing in the background. The same thing that I'm going to do, like connecting to it and uploading files, like that's what launch is going to do when a library is built. So SFTP, I can never type that right. SFTP user. Let me make sure I have this copied. This is an awful truncation. Okay. Password. Okay. Broken pipe here, and I expected this to happen because there is one extra thing I need to do. I might leave this in the video, I might not. I did do all this stuff before and got it working, so I know that this actually works. This is basically just changing permissions to things and making sure that this user is allowed to do stuff. I know this, I just saved this, so this should be okay. Exit that. Yes. This all, okay, let's just restart this. I think that should do it. I don't know. Okay, now that I just restarted SSH, I don't think I have to restart the whole container. Let's try connecting again. There we go. So I've connected via SFTP instead of SSH. So this SFTP server is up and running. The next step is to make it so that this user, when I connect to it, doesn't have to enter a password, but rather provides a key pair instead. So I'll take a break for a second. I'll come back and I'll do that. Okay, we're back. Let's make keys so that this user can connect via keys the same way Launch wants to, instead of having to enter a password. So like if you're using some other SFTP server and it's like you just have a user and a password, like you're not going to be able to do that here. As you can see, there is no password field here. They want an encrypted private key. So let's make it. So the first thing I'm going to do is exit this, and I'm going to make a key pair here for this connection, not to be confused with my container SSH connection key. These keys are going to be specifically for using SFTP. So again, I do not have this memorized. So we're going to grab my key command here, and let's clear all this out. And I'm going to call this launch SFTP key. No passphrase, no passphrase. So that generated my key. And if I look now, I should have a key and a public key. So the key has no extension, but the .pub is my public key. So now let's make sure, or let's make it so that the SFTP user can connect with these keys. So in order to do that, I need to connect via regular SSH again with my regular user and do some high-level stuff. So sorry if this takes away some of the magic for people, but I do not have all these things memorized. This is basically just like making my SFTP user, making them all the necessary like SSH connection setup folders and whatnot, and making sure that they're editable. Like this person can actually modify them, or that I can modify them as the root user. Okay, so I made that. Now I need to actually take that key that I made, and I need to get it up here. And to do that, I need to sudo nano. Well, let's do this part while that auto completes here. So remember I said I was going to change this before. This person is not going to need the password anymore. So let's change that. And then I need to sudo nano SSH authorized keys. I think I have to be in the user. That's right. Home SFTP user .ssh / authorized keys. Okay, and now I'm going to put this public key in here. I don't need that extra line. Why does that look weird? I think it just truncated it. Let me just make sure that that's there. Okay, yeah, that's there. So I'm giving it my public key so that when I connect with my private key, the server will use my public key to decrypt that. If you've ever seen the video, or if you've never seen the video that explains public-private key cryptography by mixing paint colors, I highly suggest it. Note to self, put that video in this blog post because it's super interesting. Okay, so SFTP user should have authorized key setup. I think let's do this Let's restart this just because, and exit, and we're almost done. So now let's try SFTP, and instead of my password, we're going to use my key. I always name these keys different things. Oh, I have it up there. Launch SFTP key. SFTP I launch SFTP key, SFTP user at, oh, that was right above me anyway. Okay, fingers crossed this works. Okay, so I just connected. We're almost done, I swear. So connecting via private key works. So now all I have to do is grab the known launch public key, encrypt my private key, and then launch will be able to make the same connection. So let's exit this. We're almost done with the terminal now. Okay, so let's hop over to the documentation for a second. Down here it says visit the docs. I don't know where this is going to send me to. Possibly an old page. Okay, this is what I need to do. So you can read this whole thing if you want to and learn about encryptions and whatnot, but the one thing that I need from this page is this public key here. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take me to the GitHub file. I'll click raw, and now I can just save this raw text. I'll hit save, and it's going to add txt for some reason, which I don't want. So now I have launch's public key saved. So now I'm going to encrypt my private key with launch's public key, and when the production process happens, launch is going to unlock my private key, do the SFTP upload, and we'll see. You'll see what happens. Like basically, my archive is going to end up on the SFTP server. But first, we need to encrypt my private key with this public key. So in order to do that, we have to go back to the terminal. This part is always tricky, and I don't remember. I don't think I wrote it down, but my terminal will probably help me out here. Okay, yeah, we'll leave this open now because the file's going to pop up. So we want to, oh, I forgot one other important thing. You have to do this part. You have to install GPG, which I'm not going to go through how to install that, but if you don't have it, just look up GPG install or something like that. And I need to import this key that I just downloaded. I think I've already done that, so nothing is probably going to happen here when I do it. GPG import. Let's just make sure that this key's in here. So this is the public key that I just downloaded. I can't type. Imports. So it's probably going to say nothing changed because I've already done this, but when you do it for the first time, it'll say, hey, I just added this key to your keychain, and now I can encrypt stuff with it.
So I want to encrypt.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I think that worked. I'm not sure if I did the encryption right. One thing that always bites me is I need to get rid of this line here, but I'm pretty sure this is an encrypted version of my private key encrypted with this launch public key. But let's test the connection and see if I did it right. So fingers crossed, I'll hit save, and drum roll, it failed. Okay, so I probably didn't encrypt it right. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So I figured out what was going wrong. It wasn't something with the key encryption. It was that I had the path wrong. So before I had production here, right? But I actually, in my creation of this folder, I gave it the name of upload. So I actually need to have upload here. And then, because that's what this user has permission to upload to, is this path. So I specify this is my path here. And then when launch actually does its build, right, it's going to go into this folder and make other, make whatever archives and stuff that it wants. So just to prove that this works, let's go take my encrypted key here, delete the extra space there at the end. Let's see if this tests again. I'm not sure. But if it works, it'll probably just close. Okay, so that just closed. And now I have a successful file transfer, secure file transfer protocol host set up. So let's quadruple check this, right? So now that I have this host working, I can actually go into my environments and make this host build on a library. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna do. Let's make it my production library. Why not? Because that's what it's actually gonna be in the end. So if I go to my environments, production, what kind of host do I want? So I'm gonna say I want my SFTP host. So in addition to, the SFTP setup behind the scenes, I need to tell it what the actual URL is going to be of this file. So I think I can come back and change this, but because I'm going to host this file on a CDN, right? So let's just say perpetual digital /launch. I think it just wants a path here. And I don't think I need an archive because I want the actual just minified file. So I think it should accept that. So let's hit save. And now it's going to tell me hey, you need to host, your launch script is going to be at this location, right? So this is my domain, and then these I'm pretty sure are environment IDs, and it's going to say serve me the minified one. So obviously I don't have this part set up yet, but later on I'm going to say I'll probably end up transferring from the EC2 server to an S3 bucket, and then say my S3 bucket will be served from the file in the S3 bucket will be served from CloudFront, which is AWS CD. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter now. So let's build a library. So hello, what are these errors? Okay, I don't know why you're telling me that, but we'll build this. And this should build relatively quickly. And while that's setting up, let's connect to the FTP server and see what launch makes for us. So there's my library. I'm going to go to new connection, SFTP. My username is SFTP user, and I don't have a password, but I do have a private key, and that private key is going to be, I don't know why I failed, I haven't done anything yet, is going to be launch SFTP key with no extension, right? So I'm going to hit say or connect here, and this is going to connect, and I have this folder called upload, and there's nothing in it, right? So, but once I publish here, because I have the SFTP host set up, launch is going to dump all its stuff into this SFTP server. So let's watch that happen. Alrighty, so production just published. I have a SFTP host on production. So now when I hit refresh, we'll see what Launch made for me. Here we go. So there's my environment ID. There is, what's this? These are two different things. I don't know. One of them's an environment ID. One of them is just like my entity ID. Okay, so there's my minified production launch library. So this didn't go out to my previously like managed production library. This is a new version that's dumped to this server. So now that I have this minified file in this server, I need to come up with a way to host it in a first-party context that will probably or almost certainly involve some sort of trigger that moves it off of this server and probably into an S3 bucket, but I think that will be for the next video. So stay tuned for that. I thought I was done. Alas, I am not. There's one super important thing, arguably the most important thing that I forgot to do, and that is make sure that every time this instance runs of my SFTP server, that it runs at the same publicly accessible IP address. So I actually just tried to build a library to do something else, and the connection fails now, right? So my library is timed out right here, and that's because I had since stopped and restarted my EC2 instance, and that gave me a new that new instance had a different IP address than I had previously set up. So this doesn't exist anymore. The way to get around that is to use what's called elastic IPs. So under instances, you go to elastic IPs down here on the left and hit allocate elastic IP address. As you can see, I've already done this, but it'll ask you like what instance do you want to allocate this IP address to, and I selected my SFTP server instance, and now that is allocated. So anytime that instance boots up, it will have the same IP address, which is good because I don't want to have to go into this host every single time and make sure and change the IP address. So I just made that change. So now let's go back to my instance here and reset it up. So here is my new public IP, and I'm going to hit that right there, and I think it has my key saved. I'm not sure. Let's find out. Okay, so that worked. Let's try republishing this. And that worked again. Okay, so super important. Make sure you set up an elastic IP to make sure that anytime you are running your instance or you are going to upload to this server, that the IP is always the same so that you don't have to go and change in the host every time. One other thing that I thought might be interesting for this video is to actually watch the connection going on in the background. So I actually have a command that will basically log out all the sessions in real time. So let's see, 1333. That was probably this last one. Let's do another one and just watch the connection happening in action. So I'll just call this log. I don't care. I've probably named that log a million times. Okay, so it's now 3:35. This is UTC time. And this library should build in a second. And we're going to fast forward this to production. So we should see a new connection open up here when this goes to post into this server. Cool. So there's my new connection. It looks like launch happens, the postbacks happen really fast, much faster than like the UI can even update. So it opened this connection here. It accepted my encrypted key, and it did its post, and then it closed the connection. So yeah, this is all working. Again, elastic IPs, super important.